Good morning and welcome to City Club Missoula's first virtual forum. I'm Susan Hay Patrick, board chair of City Club Missoula, and I'm so happy that so many of you registered for today's forum to hear from three of our community's most important and influential leaders. Please note that this forum is being recorded, not you individually, of course, but the forum itself. This is our first ever virtual forum here in the new abnormal. Thanks for bearing with us as we figure out how to do this. It's a little bit of uncharted territory for us, but we're giving it our best. Speaking of thanks to our sponsors who make all this possible, especially our lead sponsors, Blackfoot and First Security Bank, and our brand new sponsor, North Missoula Community Development Corporation. Thanks also to MCAT, our longtime partner, for all they do for local nonprofits, including by broadcasting City Club Missoula forums. I have a few more thanks, but first, City Club Missoula's mission is to bring people together to inform and inspire them about issues affecting Missoula, and by encouraging the discussion of new ideas and the free exchange of thought. We operate on principles of civility and civil discourse, and we expect our attendees to do the same. These principles seem especially important during tough times when we are all on edge. And to me, City Club itself is important, especially during a time like this. When we're physically distant, it's critical that we remain socially connected and civilly engaged, which are two qualities that define Missoula. We are all about networking, civic engagement, and giving back. And we can't let even a worldwide pandemic threaten our essential qualities as a community. Back to some thank yous. Thanks to our board members, especially Peggy Coor, who coordinated today's forum, and Brett Rosenberg, who along with Peggy will be our virtual microphone holder when it comes time for the audience to pose questions to our speakers. By the way, please use the question and answer function on Zoom to ask your questions when the time comes for that, not the feature. More about that later. I think there's a slide. Yes, there is a slide telling you about that. Thanks to our terrific City Club coordinator, Eric Legvold, to our three distinguished panelists and our moderator, and to the University of Montana. Okay, here comes my cat crashing the call. And to the University of Montana for giving us access to your super duper Zoom account. Finally, a special enormous thank you to Alex Karklins at UM, our technical guru who has held our hand virtually every step of the way through this entire process and who has worked tirelessly to make this forum happen electronically. He's behind the scenes here today too, still helping, so a virtual hat tip to Alex. It's now my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Missoula Institution, Jill Valley, and Assistant News Director at KPAX. In good times and bad, Jill is a calm, reassuring news professional who really cares about our community and about the news. I'm delighted that she has agreed to join us today. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Jill.
All right. Yeah, thank you so much. Boy, I tell you, it's been so much pressure on so many different parts of Missoula leadership and media to help people get through this. And even the fact that we're doing this on Zoom speaks to how things have definitely changed. So what I'm going to do is have three quick bios on our panelists, and then we'll start asking questions. And as Susan mentioned, right around noon, we'll start taking questions from the audience. So first, let me introduce Josh Slotnick. He was elected to the Missoula County Commission in 2018. He co-founded Garden City Harvest and the Peas program. He was in the Peace Corps in Thailand and has a master's degree in agricultural extension from Cornell. Hello, Josh. Yeah, big smile. All right. John Engen, he's our mayor. He's serving his 4th term as Missoula's 50th mayor. That included founding the Missoula Economic Partnership under his leadership, has helped with open space and trail issues, and was leading the way in the development of the 10-year plan to end homelessness in Missoula. And he graduated from UM with a degree in journalism, so he can come sit by me, right? And now we have Seth Bodner as well. Of course, he is our 19th president of the University of Montana, graduated from West Point, receiving both the Rhodes and the Truman scholarships. 2 master's degrees from the University of Oxford, and served as a Green Beret, and is apparently on track to become President of the United States someday. So keep that name in mind. You guys, thank you so much for being here. We have some questions. We're going to get things warmed up, and we're just going to have a nice conversation about the issues that we're facing in Missoula, and then later again incorporating some questions from our community. So let me start with the mayor. Just overall, how has this pandemic changed the Missoula community in your opinion?
Well, there are lots of moving parts here, Jill. And first, I want to thank City Club for hosting us today, and thank my colleagues on the panel. Really, from day one, we were on the phone virtually, having conversations not only about our next steps, but what happened the day before. We have been in constant contact, and I think if there's a significant change to point to, I think it's the strengthening of the relationship among the institutions who are responsible for large portions of how this community operates. Our friends at Missoula County, the University of Montana, Missoula County Public Schools, our health department, the business community, the Missoula Economic Partnership. We have all been working together really on a daily basis to manage this crisis. And it's been pretty life affirming, and we're pretty good at solving problems. Egos largely checked at the door, spirit of collaboration and thoughtfulness. And I've been really proud of the community as well. No one likes to be told to stay home. No one likes to say that they can't open their business, their restaurant. No one likes to hear that they can't get a haircut. Yet the community has really stepped up and taken care of friends and neighbors, and really showed, I think, uncommon courtesy to one another, and it's been really impressive.
All right, how about Mr. Slotnick? Same question.
Want to say it again?
Yes, how has this pandemic changed our community?
Thanks a lot. So I'm going to echo some of the things that the mayor has said, just in my own words. The lines between a bunch of our major institutions have really been blurred in ways I think they had never been before. The level of cooperation and collaboration has soared, and I think sets us up for the future. And I'm going to quote our communications person, Ann Hughes, who said, now collaboration has become the default, which is just great. And I think to a person, we've come to an understanding that in this type of crisis, everyone is a resource for the greater public good. And I've been super impressed to see everybody I've interacted with fully ready to roll up their sleeves and get busy to do what needs to be done. As the mayor said, really from day one, we've all been on the phone with each other, brainstorming, problem solving, getting obstacles out of the way as quickly as possible. I'm really excited to see this new level of cooperation and rapport continue on after this.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bodner, how would you say this pandemic has changed our community, and in your case, your academic community on campus?
Yeah, thanks, Jill. And I'd echo Mayor Engen's thanks to City Club. I really appreciate this this discussion, and especially the format, because I think it really is a great symbol of what one of the things that I've been just so honored to be a part of over the past couple of months, which has been this just tremendous coming together. That both Josh and John have spoke about, right? Perhaps maybe even a bit paradoxically, in the time of social distancing, we've seen our leadership of this community and organizations and institutions across this community come together in even greater ways than they have. I've always felt very grateful to be part of the leadership of this community that works so well together and so collaboratively together. And as both John and Josh have said, that has been absolutely the case throughout this. I mean, there's no playbook for responding as a community necessarily to a global pandemic like this, with the level of uncertainty that we've had, where the importance of consistency across different parts of our community has been so important. Here at the university, we started thinking in early February or mid-February, I should say, we should probably get some resources ready in case as this thing kind of ramps up, and our teams here started providing some resources, some tools for our faculty members to get ready to help ensure flexibility in our learning. But frankly, you just can't prepare for the need to switch really over the course of a week and a half to going remote instruction. And I want to just obviously thank my colleagues in the community, but thank also my colleagues here at the university, putting who very quickly, our faculty, our staff, putting up more than 4,000 course sections, switching from in-person to remote delivery. Our housing staff taking care of students that made sure that everybody had a place to go. But we made sure that those that had a place outside of the residence halls, could move out of those residence halls. And I think we're down to, by the end of the semester, about 68 students living in the residence halls to make sure that we're able to provide accommodations to mitigate spread, and telling our employees, those that can work remotely, to do so. Canceling a whole slew of events. I mean, it was a challenge, and it still remains a challenge. Something that we're working on. So you think about what are some of those changes that are lingering. We start our summer session today, and so we've adapted our course delivery for the first part of summer to be fully remote, but we are looking at ways to safely move back to in-person instruction for later this summer, and then for a return to in-person instruction for the fall. Because if there's anything this pandemic has taught us, is that it's important that we have to manage competing imperatives, and health, and the health and safety of our family and this community has come first and will continue to come first. But we can't ignore the importance of enabling students here at the university and students in our community to keep on learning through this. So we're hard at work making sure that we continue to adapt, that we work in close collaboration with our community partners, with public health officials at the local and state level, to make sure that we can continue to enable students to learn through this pandemic, but to do so in a way that protects the health and safety of our community.
All right, thank you so much. This goes to the mayor. How fast do you think it's going to take to get Missoula's economy back on track? And as you take a look at the future, there are some who predict that there could be a second wave of COVID-19 that could come in the months to come. Whether or not that happens is, we don't know, but we could be facing more shutdowns. And I know that's been really frustrating. As you take a look at, as the city leader and our economy, what kinds of things are you looking at?
Well, certainly. So we're seeing reopening happen. And we're doing our best to gauge what that looks like. I will tell you that one of my biggest concerns is a second round of this, and I'm less concerned that is a function of reopening, and more concerned that people are relaxing in terms of some of the really basic principles that I think have helped us so far. Social distancing, washing hands, all of the stuff that was important before remains important. And I think people really need to pay attention to that. There's a certain giddiness, I think, that comes with reopening, and I get that, but we also have to remember that that this virus does what it wants to do, and given an opportunity, it will do its thing. So we need to be very careful about that. Long-term economic prediction. I did a podcast probably 3 months ago that was all about the future of Missoula and how bright and rosy I believed it to be. I still think that we're in a position to recover more quickly than some other places for lots of reasons. But I don't have a crystal ball. And again, so much of this depends on the things that we control. And what we control are our actions in the community. Businesses and public institutions have really stepped up in terms of trying to ensure that their reopenings are safe and sound. And we just need to follow those rules. And I think that will make all of the difference.
Mr. Slotnick, how long do you think it'll take for Missoula to bounce back economically, and understanding there could be some businesses that don't recover from this?
Yeah, it's a super important question and a hard one to nail down in terms of not having a crystal ball. However, I'm certain about one thing, and that's the recovery will go faster the more we follow the rules around social distancing, et cetera. There's a correlation between the numbers of people who get sick and the economy tanking or going up. So if we look backwards, we see as the outbreak spread, our economy plummeted, right? As we can begin to recover from the outbreak, we're going to begin to recover economically as well. So if you stick with that sort of logic, if our focus is on recovering from the outbreak, we will see an economic recovery. So as the mayor said, there's a giddiness out there. People really I'm hungering for it personally to get back to life as normal. But we can't quite do it yet. We have to maintain all those rules around social distancing, wearing masks, all these things that people are sick of. And as we do that, we'll see these numbers go down and down and down. And as they go down and down, we'll see the economy go up and up. There's a direct correlation. So how fast is it going to be? Don't know, but it'll be faster if we all do what we're supposed to do. And, nobody wants that more than me.
Thank you. Mr. Bodner, one big part of our economy, of course, is Grizzly athletics. Are we going to be able to go to Washington Grizzly Stadium with 24,000 people and watch a game? Because that's obviously something that we cherish, but it's also a giant economic driving force in our community. Have we heard yet how that might go?
Yeah, of course. Well, that's something you would imagine and would guess, and you'd be right, that we're thinking about and talking about quite a bit. Just more broadly for our students to be able to our student athletes to be able to participate in athletics, and it's an important part of their education. And I'll tell you what, it was a challenge in early March as we were dealing with this, and we as the council of presidents of the Big Sky Conference universities canceled our Big Sky Conference basketball tournament. As some of you may know, our basketball team was getting ready for their shoot around in Boise, and we said, nope, this thing's canceled, and we gotta come on home. We made the hard decision to cancel all of our spring sports as well, which is difficult. But again, it's as we've said before, our focus will continue to be the health and safety of our family and our broader community. So as we look to the fall, in fact, I left midway through a meeting of the Big Sky Council of Presidents this morning, actually, and talking about how we're working together closely with the NCAA and health officials, obviously within the state of Montana, but nationally, as all schools are looking at how we handle sporting events, how we handle practices and workouts. It's an important part of our students' routines, their lives, and something that obviously we're sensitive to the health benefits, but also the mental health benefits of our students and that engagement and that participation. So everything's on hold right now, but we recognize that as an important part of important part of our community. It's an important part of our students' experience here. But we have to, approach all of these decisions through the lens first of health and safety. And I would agree with both Josh and John in that, this challenge, this COVID-19 challenge, is not something that's likely to go away immediately. And I'm praying every night for a breakthrough and for a vaccine that solves all of this. But as you read the reports, this is going to be a while. And this, I think you called it the new not normal, or maybe Susan called it that. I forget the terminology. And it's not a binary situation. And what I mean by that, it's not total lockdown, and then we wait a while and we just completely open back up and it's back to quote unquote normal. We're going to have to adapt the way we do things. And that might mean different ways of learning here at the University of Montana, maybe using technology in different ways, still getting the best of our experience here. but doing so in a way that that protects the health and safety of our community. And we're thinking the same way about Grizzly athletics. So more to follow. It's something we're thinking about and working on. But this is a broad question. I'll tell you that every university and every community around this country is dealing with now as well.
I think we'll ask one more question of all of you, and then we'll try to kick it over to the audience. So I'll start with you, Mayor. How have you managed the different factions of people as this disease has become politicized? I know people were upset at the health department for keeping us closed longer than the governor said. Some people will not wear masks, the social distancing. I've even seen comments where people don't want to go to businesses that require masks. So tension is building. And as a leader, how are you able to address all the different opinions when it comes to COVID-19?
Well, I've had a lot of experience dealing with a wide variety of opinions. Missoula is a place where it turns out not everyone agrees on everything, oddly enough. And so, you know, my job is to weigh the evidence that's before me, work with smarter people than me, and there are a lot of them, to arrive at decisions. And most of the decisions we've made around COVID-19 have really been a product of consensus. Whether it's schools reopening or not reopening, those have been communications among institutional leaders on calls, talking about the merits, the pros and cons of those decisions, and we get to a place. The nature of this is some folks are just never going to wear a mask. There are people who don't believe that COVID-19 is an actual thing, and that's just the nature of this work. We get paid to lead, we get paid to make decisions, we are elected or appointed to make those decisions. We make them in the spirit of public safety, health, and welfare. We make them with considerable information and evidence, and if we make mistakes, we cop to them and regroup. We go back. But in this case, we have marched forward, and I think our role has been slow, and I think appropriately so. We have been a little bit more cautious than some other communities, but I think that caution will continue to bear fruit in terms of the number of cases and the number of casualties and our ability to recover.
Mr. Slotnick, same question. How are you able to be a leader when you're dealing with so many different opinions, and as the disease itself and how we handle it has kind of become a political issue now?
Yeah, well, for us, this hasn't been political at all. This has been about data and science, and as the mayor mentioned, a version of consensus. We didn't call it that, but we have been on regular phone calls with pretty much all the entities involved right from the beginning, and it's really been amazing to see people air the decisions that they're faced with. Folks like the school superintendent or people at the county or the city or at the university, and talk through this. And this hasn't been a matter then of managing factions so much. It has been a matter of coordination and bringing people together to talk things through. An example that comes to mind here is with MEP and a reopening working group, where this group is designing protocols for businesses, so that if businesses follow these protocols, they can be as safe as possible. Well, it absolutely makes sense to have that group be in close coordination with the health department. And this doesn't have anything to do with who likes what business or politics, but working between the health department and the reopening group, so everybody's got the best information. And, I feel like that's how we've made progress, and I'm excited for more of that in the future. Like I said, this isn't about managing as so much as it's been about coordinating and collaborating and using science as our guide.
Mr. Bowder, how has this whole thing changed the way you lead, or the questions you're asking, or how you're coordinating the different opinions about this as you get phone calls from the public, from students, and from other university leaders?
Oh yeah, of course, Jill, and thank you. As you can imagine, one of the great things about a university, and in similar ways to some of the things that make Missoula great, is the fact that we have a diversity of viewpoints, and a community here that's not shy about expressing those viewpoints here on campus, and that makes us better. And and admittedly, that can be a challenge when you're dealing with a situation as difficult as this one, with as much uncertainty as this one. A situation I heard a leader shared with me the other day. He said, look, you're making decisions based on information that you have at the time. And he said, I've started saying people, try not to judge leaders on the decisions they make today based on the information you had yesterday. And it just these are difficult, evolving situations. But I think what's been important for us as a university through this is being clear about a couple of things. One, being clear about the fact that there are competing imperatives at play here. And we said, first and foremost is health and safety of our community. And that is the lens through which we viewed every decision, first and foremost. At the same time, we have an obligation and an important duty to ensure that our students can continue to learn through this pandemic, which is going to last for a long time. And it's not realistic for us to say, well, we just can, we don't allow students to learn for the next 1.5 to 2 years. So we have to do that. We have to acknowledge at the same time that this pandemic has revealed and perhaps exacerbated already existing inequities in terms of access to technology, and that one person's ability to learn, quote unquote, remotely is very different from another person's ability. And that if we're not careful, we will widen already challenging equity gaps and access gaps in our community. And so you have these competing imperatives. And I think it's important as a leader in these times to be honest and put those and be straightforward. And one of the things we've tried to do is be really consistent in our communications with our campus about, and everything we say, look, first and foremost is health and safety. It's also important we enable students to keep on learning. And so you talk about the decisions that you make through with a level of transparency about the competing imperatives that you're balancing, and you do the best you can. And I think just one other important point is to, as a leader in this time, to be very cognizant of the professional challenges that we're all facing in a time like this, but being much more aware of the personal challenges that everyone is also dealing with through this challenge. We're all facing unexpected and perhaps unforeseen challenges. My wife Chelsea and I both work and have 3 elementary aged kids trying to learn, so we're both in the spot of being swamped with work demands and as well as kid demands, and having that constant feeling of being utter failures, perhaps at both. And I think and those are trivial, frankly, relative to some of the concerns that members of our community are dealing with, whether it's family members who are sick, the loss of jobs, the loss of ability to earn income. And there are very real costs, non-health costs, obviously, of this pandemic that people are bearing, and just being aware of that and finding ways to support your employees, us finding ways to support our students, enabling ways for people to recharge through this is really, really important. One story, and then I'll stop, that I shared with, I've been, as this semester, I was dropping into various classes through Zoom and talking with our students. And I, shared a story, our oldest daughter, our 9-year-old daughter, when she was young, maybe 2 or 3 years old, she and her twin brother, Chelsea and I were very, very strict about nap times. When you have twins, those of you who have twins, you got to be very serious about getting them down at the right time. And our daughter, when she would get tired, would sometimes just say, you know what? And she wouldn't say, she'd walk to her room and say, I need to recharge my batteries. She'd go and take a nap herself. Her brother would just often collapse in a pile on the floor. But I've had to remember my daughter's words, and I've had to share those with our students, because this situation is trying all of us in ways that are seen and unseen. And as a leader, trying to find ways to enable your team and to be aware of people's real need to recharge their batteries here, because we're all in this for the long all. And I think that's an important aspect of leadership that I've had to really reflect on over the past couple of months.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to start with some questions now from folks out there in internet land. This first one, and some of these may be more geared toward Mr. Engen and Mr. Slotnick, but this one comes to us from Yvonne, and she says this: property taxes doubled this year on my small downtown office building. The current level of taxes is not sustainable, and I don't feel my tenants are in a position to sustain a substantial rent increase, especially in light of decreasing revenues due to COVID-19. What are the top reasons for the large increase in our property taxes after the last assessment? And do you anticipate any property tax relief in the future? If so, how and when? We'll start with you, Mayor.
Sure. So the largest increase in property taxes is a function of the Department of Revenue's assessments, right? So Department of Revenue every 2 years now evaluates the value of your property, and our taxes are based on that valuation. Not passing the buck, that's just a fact. And so during our budget cycle last year, for example, we kept taxes flat because those valuations were good. We had quite a bit of growth in revenue and valuation. I suspect that those valuations aren't going to change much based on COVID-19. I think the value of property, based on what the Montana Department of Revenue believes, is that it remains valuable. So our challenge here is twofold. One is, how do we maintain the level of service that residents demand, that businesses demand, that are necessary for a community to function, while still being as sensitive as we possibly can to the challenges that are facing property owners and people who are paying those bills. We are continuing to have conversations with the state as part of the CARES Act. There is aid to local governments. Today, what we're not hearing that aid comes in the form of property tax relief. So as we enter our budget cycle, we're having a hard look at what fiscal year 2021 looks like. And we'll even be peeking out to 22 and 23. But the fact of the matter is that we're sensitive, but we also don't have a whole lot of options. We don't have sales tax. We have a marginal share of state income tax. We have a marginal share of other revenues collected by the state. So we've got to keep the wheels on the wagon here and keep the lights on in order for this community to work. And so it's a tough one.
What about you, Mr. Slotnick? I know property taxes and taxes in general are really weighing heavy on people. Feel like we're getting nickel and dime to death.
Right. This is a big issue. So by way of answering this question, I'd like to talk a little bit about last year and then a little bit about next year. I'll kind of stand on the line of present between the past and future. So last year, we at the county got hit with a couple things that I think these words aren't even in the vocabulary of our most regular people. We lost revenue from PILT. PILT is payment in lieu of taxes. For those who don't know, basically this is set up for counties like ours that have a whole lot of federal land. The reason why that's a problem in terms of property taxes is if that land was owned by individuals, there'd be some property tax being paid. So instead of people paying property tax for that land, our federal government gives counties like ours a little bit of money per acre. It's called PILT, payment in lieu of property taxes. Well, the algorithm changed. We lost a bunch of PILT money last year. We also lost money from what are called centrally assessed properties. These are properties where the property crosses county lines. The main ones in this are our utilities. So these are two big sources of tax revenue that went away. We also had some properties that were paying property taxes that are no longer part of Missoula County. So we lost there too. And as the mayor pointed out, that leaves us with one tool by which we can use to generate revenue to pay for services, things like health department, emergency services, elections. And that overused, ham-fisted, poorly designed tool is called property tax. And we are striving to come up with alternatives, but the legislature has left us just but a few options. Okay, so now that was the past, and we're going to go forward a little bit. We were able to do a couple things to help take the edge off this crisis in terms of property taxes. These are small, but they're meaningful for the people involved. We are able to delay the collection of property taxes for mobile homes. We're also able to delay the collection of taxes for personal property. Basically, this is business equipment. And these two delays are really designed to ameliorate some of the harshness of this crisis on two specific populations, low-income folks and business owners. The other thing we're doing looking forward is trying to come up with new tools that are much fair and more responsible and focused than property tax. And the one that I'm really excited about, but I won't go off on now because I know we have more things to talk about, is the gas tax, and that is on the ballot coming in June. A big challenge for us is to come up with other ways to provide services besides using property taxes.
The follow-up question to that Yvonne had asked was, are you guys, as city and county budgets, are you tightening your belts as well, as long as the people out there who are trying to live in this economy?
Yeah, and you know, the premise of the question is the assumption that our belts are loose already, and they're not really. I mean, you look at the lion's share of municipal budget, and it's public safety. It's police officers and firefighters, and delivering those daily services that people rely on in order for communities to work. So our belt tightening is sort of constant. What I will tell you is that as a function of our budget process this year, every year we have millions of dollars of new requests because our leaders and managers within municipal government are hearing demands from citizens for expanded services, and we're looking at certainly tempering that this year. And we're always looking for savings and opportunities to ensure that we're being good stewards of this public investment. You know, we're like everyone else. The expense of doing business as government matches the expense of doing business as a cable company or a coffee stand or a retailer or you name it. So we're not immune from expenses and therefore, or increased expenses, and therefore we need to manage those.
I'm going to ask this because it kind of dovetails into when it comes to spending
Sure.
money. Adam Jones has asked, what are the short-term and long-term strategies regarding the city's purchase of Sleepy Inn? Now, that's been kind of a polarizing issue. Some say you shouldn't have done that. It's not what it should be, but you did anyway. So let's talk about that a little bit. Was that a good thing to do? What are you going to do with it? Who's going to pay for it? What does that look like in the future for us? As I'm sure you've heard both ends of that argument, whether or not it was a good thing to do, to buy.
Sure, and I've seen a lot of misinformation around the Sleepy Inn project. You know, Facebook is not necessarily the best source of information any more than Twitter or other modes of social media, but I get that. It's all part of the program today. The fact of the matter is that we purchased the Sleepy Inn because of an emergent need expressed to us by Health Department and Incident Command to house people who have been tested for COVID-19, need to be quarantined, and may have the illness. And if there were not a safe, secure place for those folks to be housed, they would be out among the community, potentially spreading the virus and putting us all at risk. So we purchased the Sleepy Inn. A, because we had a willing buyer, B, because before the COVID-19 crisis, part of our housing strategy has been to acquire land in the right places for redevelopment. And in this case, the Sleepy Inn is in an urban renewal district, and it's also in an opportunity zone. So the people who can come to the table as community partners and market partners to redevelop this site, that potential is greatly increased. So today, the Sleepy Inn, as of this morning, the Sleepy Inn is hosting 4 residents who have been tested for COVID-19 and are awaiting results of those tests. We will continue to use that facility until such time as we no longer need space for what's called non-congregate shelter. There's no other place for these folks to go. We had a lot of folks saying, well, just, you know, the hoteliers are hungry and they would love to have these folks in their hotels. Well, the folks we have worked with who were generous enough to provide this sort of space temporarily got pretty damn fed up pretty fast because it is a difficult situation when you're homeless, unsheltered, sick and poor, You may have mental illness or addiction, and you may have lots of friends who might want to come visit you where you are. So this facility makes the community safer. At the end of the day, we are being reimbursed through a lease with Missoula County from FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. That reimbursement will go back to the redevelopment agency, which purchased the property with cash. The redevelopment agency is paying the $13,000 property tax bill, so all tax jurisdictions are continued to be made whole. And when this facility is no longer necessary as a function of this crisis, we will begin a community process that allows us to redevelop this property, most likely for low and moderate income housing, which is a critical need in our community that we hear about over and over again. So I think there are a lot of winners in this, but it all sprang from an emergency, and we did what we thought was right in the emergency, and I continue to think that that was the right thing to do.
Do you agree, Mr. Slotnick?
Absolutely. I'm glad I got to chat on this one. We at Missoula County are proud to be part of this. This is a serious public health issue. It's really difficult for all people all across Missoula to have to stay home. Imagine if you had to stay home, not just because we were in a general state of lockdown, but because you were awaiting the results of a test. You really couldn't go anywhere. This is deep quarantine, right? Or if you indeed were sick, but you had no home to stay in, what are you going to do? Well, we have people in that situation. What they're going to do is end up cruising around town. It's a public health issue. We need to keep these people safe, and by keeping them safe, we're going to keep everybody else safe. We needed to have a non-congregate shelter as a public health issue. So Missoula County is proud to be part of this. And as the mayor pointed out, these are FEMA reimbursable expenses. We aren't the only community across the United States facing this. Pretty much everyone of any size is. So we responded to an emergency. I was really excited for us to be part of it, proud of the creativity of all involved to make this happen quickly. And if everything goes as well as it should, we'll all be made financially whole in the end, and we will have kept people from spreading illness through our community and treating people with dignity in the short term. So this is a lot of wins.
I'm going to ask, we have another question from an audience member, from Nicholas. I'm going to ask this to Mr. Bodner, because you touched on it a little bit in something you said earlier. The question goes, this global pandemic has revealed many inequities in our community regarding access to technology, education, social services, and healthcare. How might we emerge from this disruption and be more resilient in 3 to 5 years from now? So I'll start with you, Seth.
Oh, thanks. And I appreciate the question. And I think it is an incredibly important issue for us to think about. And perhaps I'll maybe approach it from an education, higher education standpoint, and then leave room for John and Josh to perhaps add in context from their perspective as well. I think what we realize, any university needs to do, and well, not any university, but in particular, what's special about the University of Montana, I always tell people, is that you have here in this town a world-class university, a university that at which one can receive an education that's on par with any institution in the land. And but what's different about UM, and why I'm so honored to be here, is that we endeavor to make that high quality education not just accessible to the elite, select, kind of chosen few, right, with resources, with access, but we strive to make it accessible to people from different starting points in all walks of life. So this combination of quality with accessibility, that's what's special about the University of Montana. And I think it's more important than ever. And we say at the end of the day, our job is to help nurture and foster inclusive prosperity. And so through this pandemic, but more broadly, I think this just I think makes more clear some of the critical imperatives for us to make sure that our mode of education is as flexible as possible. That we're going to have learners at different stages of their lives, different points in their career. Some will seek a 4-year residential experience, and that those individuals also come from different starting points and have different needs, and we need to meet those needs. But many are going to need to access education perhaps later in their careers, or for additional training or retraining or certification as skills evolve. You know, they say the half-life of technical skills today by most studies is about 5 years. And so the idea that people need to go to college from the time they're 18 to 22, and then they have a job that stays constant for the next 30 years, that's never really been true. It's certainly not true in today's rapidly changing economy. So one of the things we're striving to do at the University of Montana is really expand our conception of the ways in which we serve learners from all backgrounds, all starting points, and at different stages of their careers, really making our university accessible in the broadest sense of the word. And that's something we've been working on before this. And it's something that I think becomes even more clear coming out of this, that we need to continue to work on.
All right, same question for you, Josh. Would you like me to ask it again?
No, I think I got it. We're looking towards equity here. And if you look nationally at what's happened with who's getting COVID and who isn't, I mean, on one hand, you could say, oh, everyone is susceptible. All human beings are susceptible. And certainly that's true. But the rates are much higher if you overlay a map of who has had or is getting COVID-19 with race and poverty. And where you have these things line up, our inequities shine very unfavorably and unflatteringly through. The way that the patterns of this disease has made those distinctions extra sharp. Looking forward, technology as part of this, as the president alluded to a little bit there, I think we start thinking of technology and internet technology more like a utility that everyone should have. We might be able to address some of the technological inequities a little bit more moving forward. The larger inequities are just a giant question. Maybe in light of this crisis, we'll have some new inspiration to tackle these. We're really smart as human beings, and we experience success where we put our focused energy. And I don't believe we've put a tremendous amount of focused energy towards addressing these inequities. We've put some for sure, but I'm talking on a larger scale as a country. If we really made this job one, I think we'd gain a whole lot of ground. And this crisis has brought that to light.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Engen. And we're gonna maybe try to keep these little briefs because we're running out of time and you want to get some more questions in. Not that everything you guys are saying isn't fantastic, but go ahead.
Sure, trying to keep me brief is always a challenge. Let me say that I agree with both Seth and Josh. I will also say that this crisis has really shown a light on inequities that existed before, continue to exist. And what I am convinced of is that local jurisdictions are going to need to solve this. The federal government has largely abdicated its responsibilities for caring for the mentally ill, trying to solve for poverty, hunger, and homelessness. And that's the reason we're leaning so hard into all of this. And it's very difficult work, it's expensive work, it's challenging work. But my hope is that as we come out of this and continue to recover, a piece of that will be making sure that we don't have so many have-nots, that we continue to increase the safety net, and that we provide all citizens a quality of life in this place that we love.
Okay, our next question comes to us from Andrea Davis, and she's asking it to John and Josh. How do you envision wait, am I got the right question here? Oh, yes, I do. Okay. How do you envision large societal issues like homelessness that seem to be placed on localities to solve, elevating that by local government leaders to the state so that we can solve these challenges together? So how can we make this less of a burden on Missoula to solve our homeless problem and make it more of a statewide thing? And I'm sure people envision the homeless camp as one of those issues.
Yeah, so I'll just jump in here. So the essence of this question is, how do we kind of share the burden? How do we make this so it isn't just a local jurisdiction issue and transfer some of the burden onto the state? And I mean, the simple answer here through is elections. We're going to have the state government and the local government that we deserve in some sense by who we choose to occupy those roles. So on the state side, elect the people that you feel will do the best job of addressing these issues, and they work together, they'll get it done. I'm going to agree with the mayor, though, in that to a large degree, federal government and state governments have abdicated their responsibility, and a lot of this is on us. And therein lies a huge challenge. And this is what these are the things we need to work on.
Mr.
But I also think we're up to meeting the challenge. One of the things that it's a fact that sort of has been lost in all of the news cycles around COVID. So our point in time survey that we do every year around homelessness, our numbers this year were in the 300s. They're typically in the 900s, which suggests that the work we're doing through our 10-year plan, through 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 30 people being housed as a function of concentrated efforts around housing first, reaching out to those folks, meeting them where they are. We're actually finding places for people to live permanently, and that's making a difference. But I continue to agitate at the state level. The state isn't talking about housing, and housing is a critical issue in all Montana communities, rural and urban. But it just does not rise to the level of discourse that it needs to at the state level. And so one of the things that I talk with legislators about, I talk with candidates for office about, is the fact that housing is a critical need all around Montana, and we would begin to solve a lot of our problems in all of those communities if people had affordable, decent places to live.
Thank you. All right, our next question comes from one of my esteemed colleagues in the media, and this will be for Seth. And Maritza asks, is there going to be a hard deadline on when UM needs to decide about football games at Washington Grizzly Stadium?
Thanks, Maritza. The short answer is we do not have a drop dead date. In fact, building some flexibility into this is really important. And so we're looking at both the conditions here in Montana as well as across 8 different states in which we have Big Sky Conference universities. And so, you have considerations around travel from out-of-state teams, the conditions in certain states. The key words here is going to have to be flexibility and understanding, again, what we would need to do here to host a game while ensuring the health and safety of our community, and also what's it mean for other teams to travel here or for the Grizzlies to travel somewhere else. So there's not a hard and fast deadline. It's going to be later in the summer, and we're going to have to be pretty flexible here, and that's what we're working through right now.
Next question comes from Peter Christian of KGVO, wants to know, where does Missoula County Health Officer Ellen Leahy get the authority to make the sweeping decisions that have affected the community? As she can tighten the restrictions more than the governor has. So where does that come from? And maybe explain the process of how that goes. And I'll start with either John or Josh.
Yeah, and it's a relatively short answer, state law. Statute provides in counties in the state of Montana, statute provides for health officers to be appointed. They report specifically to a health board. That's an appointed group of citizens, and that health officer has authority to make these complicated decisions around closures, openings, etc. All happens in state law. All that said, we have a good collaborative relationship with Ellen Leahy, our health officer. She is on all of our calls, and she works within the context of community, within the context of data and science, and also within the context of governor's orders, and adjust those accordingly based on all the input she gets. It's a tough job, a tough position to be in, and I think she tries to dispatch her responsibilities with considerable care and a great sense of responsibility to the broader community.
All I would add to that is in the latest governor's announcement, he specifically asked local health officers to adjust his recommendations according to the needs they saw on the ground. So Ellen is doing as she was asked to do.
I think that's good. I think some people, a lot of times we're learning these procedures and processes as we go along, as we find ourselves in
For
this.
sure.
We have about 5 minutes left, and I think this is a great question from Frank Reed. He writes, in addition to the closer collaboration that you noted at the start, can you each name one or two opportunities that this pandemic has afforded us? Like, what are the bright spots, the good maybe that has come out of the situation that we have found ourselves in? Let's start with Mr. Botner.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. I mean, I think there are so many broader societal things we could discuss in this. So I'll stick specifically with higher ed. I think, you know, one of the things we've realized through this is just how important it is to people and how special is the personal touch that really embodies a UM education. You know, this idea that we're the flagship university, at which, you know, have people that have won the Nobel Prize and some of the best researchers in the world, literally. But this is a place where you come and people know your name and that you're not a number, and you get that personal interaction. And I think this time of distancing has just really made us, I think, much more aware of how unique is the U of M experience. But what opportunity I think it's afforded us is through the necessity to use technology for certain aspects of our education model. We've seen, you know, some and learned, I think, our faculty, and a huge credit to our faculty. And I want to thank them again for the adaptability they've shown. And I think we're learning some things, you know, maybe there are some ways, some parts of our educational experience that you can deliver remotely and enable more time to focus on that personal aspect of the University of Montana is one. And then second, we've also even thought in terms of how some of our academic calendar is structured. There's been some ideas that have come up from our faculty members and other people across the university saying, you know, can we relook at the length of terms within a semester? Can we enable easier and perhaps shorter chunks at which people can enter and complete parts of a semester, and there, I think there are some opportunities to increase accessibility and perhaps what you might call modularity of our educational offerings to enable people to you know, continue to work and get some education, and or if you're a full-time student, do an internship and get some education. So I think we're seeing some really exciting innovation happening in terms of how we deliver that really special and unique UM educational experience.
I'll go to you, Mr. Slotnick.
Thanks. So two opportunities I see moving forward. And one of them, I think the president kind of touched on a little bit early on when he was talking about how this crisis affects everyone on kind of a human level. Well, one thing I've noticed in our business kind of interaction with other governments, with constituencies, with our own departments, et cetera, is a great increase in patience that people are having with one another. Okay, somebody's Zoom technology isn't working, and everybody kind of just takes a breath and we roll with it, and then we're in a hard situation, so everybody's being a little bit more patient. I think in that patience, we found the space to recognize each other's humanity in a way we don't always do before. And it's that recognition, I believe, that fosters great collaboration. And we have that moving forward. It's as if this is true, we've all been through this really intense thing together. We're going through it. Our rapport and understanding of one another is going to be tighter. Our bonds to each other will be tighter because we have this shared experience. And that's going to allow us to achieve all kinds of things that would have been far more difficult had we still been looking at each other kind of at arm's length. So the second thing that jumps to mind in terms of opportunities going forward is that right now our economy isn't quite on pause. We're beginning to open up, but we're not in the thick of it going 100 miles an hour like we typically are. And in this moment, we have the opportunity to really envision how is it we want our economy to live, to be? How is it we want our city and our county to be? And I've been really heartened by the conversations we've been having with other officials in this reopening group and our MAC calls, all these other calls, that people are taking a moment right now to think about what is it we want to be? Not just how do we get back to what we were, but how do we get to what we want to be? And I've loved that we have this moment to take that on, and there's great opportunity there.
All right, thank you. Mayor.
So a couple of things. One is, you know, whether in your personal life, in your business life, your work life, or as leaders of institutions, we tend to do the same things we've always done because we know how to do them and they tend to be easier. And in the last 2 months, we've done probably 10 years worth of process improvements because we've had to. So for example, I think we've created some systems through not only technology, but also through our rulemaking to make it easier and more meaningful for folks to comment on public processes. So we're not having a public hearing that happens over the course of 5 minutes or 6 hours in some cases. We're extending those public hearings for a week so that folks have lots of opportunity to digest and comment and provide feedback to their elected officials who are going to make decisions ultimately. We've leveraged technology, whether it's Zoom to do virtual meetings, and telephone banks and some new email and recording technology to provide what I think is greater access to citizens to local government. We've changed the way we do business in person at City Hall. We've addressed some security issues that we had been wringing our hands over for a good long time. And I think we'll continue to do that process improvement and take some of the techniques that we're using today in COVID-19 forward to do business better on behalf of the folks we serve. I suffer an unusual malady as a Norwegian from optimism, and I'm optimistic about the future of this community in no small part because of residents' daily work to assist all of us in moving forward and staying safe. But these leadership calls have been incredibly enlightening. I think we've established a sense of trust among community leaders and a sense of resilience and reliance. And my hope is that our now 3 times a week calls continue into the future beyond COVID, because we all have challenges and opportunities to help one another. Seth Bodner is not in the business of solving all of the University of Montana's problems alone. Josh Slotnick is not in the position as chair of the Missoula County Board of Commissioners to solve all of the county's challenges alone, nor am I alone in this. We're all in it together. And I think we've recognized that in some meaningful ways. I think we can take each other's advice and we can collaborate and move in lockstep forward to make the community a better place for everyone.
All right, Mayor, thanks so much. We've kind of run out of time here. I'm going to toss it back over to Susan Haypatrick to wrap it up. But thanks for being here. And I think we go forward with optimism and hope, and maybe we end up better than we were before. At least that's certainly the hope. So thank you so much for your comments. Susan, you have the floor, or the computer screen,
you.
whatever we're calling
it. Thank you. Whoa. Screen sharing. Yes, thanks to our sponsor. I think that question about opportunity is a great question to end on, because, you know, John, you said that you were an optimist. I feel like I always say I'm not an optimist or a pessimist, I'm a possibilist. And I think that one thing that is possible as a result of this experience is that we will focus more intently on the issues that have been brought into the sharpest relief about inequity and about issues that we really need to be devoting. Sorry, my cat is again crashing this call. That we really need to devote our time, our expertise, our experience. And I feel really fortunate to live in Missoula, where, as Seth said, there's not a playbook for this, but I'm really grateful that the leaders of 3 of our most important institutions are all very strongly on the same team. Thank you, Jill, for moderating. Thank you to our panel. Thank you to our audience for such great questions. I really illuminated some issues. Thanks again to Alex, our IT guru, and to all of you for joining us. Thanks to the many sponsors who make City Club Missoula happen, especially Blackfoot and First Security Bank. One of the things that surfaced today were questions about equity. And one of the things that our City Club board has spent considerable time discussing is how to make our forums more accessible to more Missoulians. We know that monthly in-person forums over lunch or dessert, despite our efforts to keep them as affordable as possible, mean that some people aren't able to, the format doesn't work and isn't feasible for some people. So we are likely to repeat this virtual format in the future in the interest of equity and expanding our reach. So if we survey you after this about the format, please respond. And please also feel free to share your ideas about future forum topics. You can do that through our website, cityclubmissoula.com. You can also make a contribution to support our work at cityclubmissoula.com. As I said at the beginning, this forum is especially important during this unprecedented time in our community. So on that note, stay healthy, stay safe, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.